على محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وهدى وتقى يا رب العالمين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك نستغيث أصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا إلى أنفسنا طرفة عين. My respected elders and brothers and sisters in Islam, I pray that you are all well and that you're in a state of safety and well-being, and that your loved ones are also, inshallah, in a similar condition as well. I also ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by his most beautiful names and most lofty attributes that he should confer his acceptance upon all of our deeds and our du'as, upon your acts of giving, of charity, your acts of prayer, of salah, of du'a, of tilawah of the Quran, and above all, of course, your fasting itself. My respected elders and brothers and sisters, what we want to do in the coming moments is to remind ourselves of some of the teachings of Islam regarding the practices of the Prophet ﷺ with respect to the time of the month of Ramadan that we're in. Specifically, two pieces of advice. The first is about al-jud, jud, which is the Arabic word for generosity. The word al-jud or generosity is linked with the month of Ramadan in the minds of the Muslims. And Nabi al-Karim alayhi salatu wasalam is described in the authentic hadith found in the Sahih of Imam Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala in his Sahih, and it occurs elsewhere in many of the other books, and with varying narrations, all coming down to the following reality: that كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أجود الناس, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, the messenger, was the most generous of all people. وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان حين يلقاه جبريل, and the most generous you'd find him period at all would be in the month of Ramadan, when the angel Jibreel alayhi salam would come and visit the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فَيُدَارِسُ الْقُرْآنِ, so then he would rehearse and revise whatever Quran had been revealed thus far up to that point. He'd revise it every year, every Ramadan. He'd come every single night and he'd revise the ayat of the Quran that had been revealed thus far in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life. And then the hadith goes on to say that the Prophet ﷺ was more generous in this period when Jibreel alayhi salam is coming, i.e. in the month of Ramadan, and that connection with the Quran is being established or further deepened. And he'd be more generous than al-rih al-mursala, which means then a strong gusty breeze that comes. So the wind, a strong gusty breeze that, literally blows all things apart. The Prophet ﷺ's generosity left everything else behind. He was so generous, alayhi salatu wasalam. And let us remember that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was generous, he was someone who was internally rich. His spirit was rich, but he didn't ever live an opulent life. He was not someone who lived in great mansions, etc. And yet he, alayhi salatu wasalam, was still noted for his incredible generosity. So what I want to do is encourage all people, of course, to remember that, and to remember specifically that one of the features which comes out of generosity is that you manage to, if you like, complete some of the effects of fasting. Fasting, of course, as we all know, is there to increase our taqwa of Allah. Part of that is that it creates a space, if you like, in your inner self, in your psyche, in your heart, in your mind, in your emotions, where actually it's not crowded up with all of the, if you like, the small mundane activities of just the eating and the drinking and your attachment to material things, to creature comforts. In fact, you learn to rise above that, and there's space inside you for further reflections, for further meditations and deliberation upon the signs out there of the greatness of Allah, of His wonders, of the creations, of the alternation of the heavens, of the day and the night. All of these things therein are signs for people of reflection to increase in their awareness of Allah and their consciousness of Allah, and ultimately in their mindfulness of their duties which they owe towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their taqwa. So this is something which fasting achieves. But still, ultimately, there can be still, due to the deficiencies and the shortfalls of every one of our fasts, that there can be a shortfall, and thus the giving of charity also creates that space, because you learn to create that extra tiny amount of distance between yourself and your emotional, psychological over-dependence on the material, on the if you like, the bank balances, etc. So one doesn't put oneself in hardship, and one obviously consults people who are experts in the field, legally, financially, etc. But one actually just tries to find that space within oneself, within one's self, to discover that resilience, by recognizing that this is not all that there is to me and to my life and to my existence. Rather, the center of my existence is my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then once that space is created, both through the fasting and the act of giving and generosity, then there's now this central hub of space for your connection with the Quran to become profound. Because now, actually, one of the biggest distractions with it, which is our emotional, psychological attachment, obsessive attachment almost, with the material, at the expense of sometimes higher values and principles and goals that we all set ourselves and ought to set ourselves. Now, those connections are somewhat more, if you like, not so solid, and there's more fluidity in your inner self, and there's a greater ability to be receptive to the guidance of the divine Jalla wa Ala. So this is one of the things to be borne in mind. Part of this, I want to just remind you, is only part of this is zakat itself. Otherwise, zakat is not something, there are of course two types of zakat. Zakat al-fitr, which is meant to be given in the couple of days preceding Ramadan, and that's only around £5 equivalent of money or food, depending on the scholarly view that one follows. And that's just a couple of days before Eid. And that's so that the poor people have something on the day of Eid itself, and they don't have to beg, etc., etc. But Zakat al-Mal, which is actually the third pillar of Islam, that itself is not something which is intrinsically linked to Ramadan itself. Your Zakat date does not need to be in Ramadan. Indeed, there is some merit in it being in Ramadan. It could be if that's genuinely your date, or sometimes people want to coincide their act of giving within the month of Ramadan. But otherwise, if your actual zakat date is, let's say, 3 months hence, it may be better, and especially in this year, with the COVID-19, the coronavirus, to actually wait till the actual due date that's Islamically ordinarily appointed, which is whenever that date is. If it's Ramadan, brilliant. If it's later down in the year, brilliant as well. So I'm saying to you, give sadaqat by all means right now, but maybe wait for the right time for your zakat, because it might be once we're unlocked, as the expression goes, once the lockdown is lifted, you may actually be able to have a better sense of where the need is the greatest. If the need is already very clear to you right now, you know exactly where it's needed, brilliant, excellent. Maybe that's something to bear in mind. But actually, the need may be more visible to you afterwards, when we see various people whose conditions, their jobs, their situation, their circumstance really is different to what it was prior to the lockdown. So it may be better to wait till then. And again, when it comes to giving, maybe some can be local, some can be global, depending again on need and other considerations alike. And also bear in mind, it is better in principle, after of course you consult with the people who know about the matters of English law and the like, for you to consider giving it in person, zakat in person, because this then helps or at least this helps you to build a link, a connection with the poor and the needy, such that it's actually not just an act of donation, of giving charity. Rather, there's a fraternal link which is directly established, not through some video they sent to you or a report or a card, but actually an acquaintance which is established between different levels of society, different strata, where those who have got zakat money, donors, are actually becoming acquaintances and maybe even connected and friends with those who would need it otherwise. And that opens up other opportunities of giving in a smart manner, inshallah ta'ala. So that's just a point I wanted to say to yourselves about the act of al-jud, of generosity and giving. And remember, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that this act of the zakat itself is not an act of charity. It's something which is a duty upon us. It's not something we do just out of the goodness of our hearts because we're feeling generous, but actually something that we believe, religiously speaking, spiritually speaking, is something which is a pillar of Islam itself. That's what I wanted to put out as the first point. The second point is, of course, tonight being the 21st night of Ramadan. Tonight, from the point of Maghrib, Salatul Maghrib onwards, will be the 21st night of Ramadan. And that marks the beginning of the last 10 nights and the first of the odd nights, in which Nabi al-Kareem, alayhi salawatullahi wa salamuhu wa barakatuh, would search out and seek out the night of decree, the night of power, the night of Laylatul Qadr. And this night, its enormity, its massive opportunity that it represents, it's something which human words can really not put into normal expressions and sentences. So what do we do when we cannot find the words to describe the glorious opportunity which presents itself before each and every one of us in these nights, the nights which remain with us? Just think how fast, how swiftly this whole month has actually totally vanished. It feels like it's evaporated before our very eyes. And let's face it, some of the opportunities which may have ordinarily been at our disposal may not have been. But now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, mashayikh and ulama and elders, now is our opportunity to really show our keenness, our eagerness, and our sincerity, the depth of our emotions to be presented before Allah, how keen we are and how genuine we are in our desire for His good pleasure and for His acceptance. And that if we have that, no matter whose rejection we face from day to day, from week to week, month to month, actually we have the most important asset in our life, which is the pleasure of the Almighty, the irresistible, the sublime, Allah Jalla wa Ala, God Almighty. That being the case, brothers and sisters, this is the time when we should stand in prayer. We should try and do acts of goodness, of charity. We should remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is the dhikr, the dua, which occurs in a hadith with some discussion surrounding its authenticity, but it says that the dua is Allahumma innaka afoon tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Oh Allah, you are the pardoner, you love to pardon, so pardon me. That and any other dua asking Allah's forgiveness, His mercy, His kindness, His generosity, His compassion. And find it within your hearts to overlook, to pardon and forgive and forget as much as you can, if not all that you can, of the ordinary misunderstandings which occur amongst people, amongst friends, amongst family members, that you overlook these things, you pardon, you forgive, because you turn to the heavens and you look for forgiveness for yourself. So similarly, you look to your peers, your colleagues, your family members, and those who are your loved ones, and you recognize that the good within your relationships may be far greater than that which is not. This is all in the appropriate circumstances, of course. When you do this, then it makes you a recipient or eligible for the blessings of Allah, His forgiveness and His kindness and His pardon. And is this not what we are all looking for? The Prophet ﷺ would stand in night prayer حتى تتفطر قدماه, until his ankles would swell up. And his wife, our mother Aisha radiallahu anha, would say, and otherwise would say, Ya Rasulullah, why are you doing this? You have no sins. All your past and future sins are all forgiven. You have no sins. He said, Afala akun abadan shakura. Should I then not be one of his grateful servants? Brothers and sisters, should we also not be one of Allah's grateful servants? Because the Prophet ﷺ informed us, Man qama Ramadana imana wa ihtisaba. من قام ليلة القدر إيمانا واحتسابا غفر له ما تقدم من ذنبه. Whoever stands the night of Laylatul Qadr out of Iman and looking forward to the delights of the rewards and blessings and grace of Allah, then they shall have their past sins forgiven. And if you then couple that with tawbah to Allah, that will include both the major and the minor sins. Make the firm resolve to return all rights to those who are the rightful owners of those rights, that you ask their forgiveness, you have a clean heart. And as I said to you, our human words cannot do justice to the realities of this night. So what should we then do except to turn to the words of the Almighty, the Majestic, the Magnanimous, the Most Generous? We turn to the words of the Quran, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr, that the night of Ramadan is not the opportunity of a lifetime. It is equivalent to a lifetime. For the Quran tells us that the night of decree, the night of power, Laylatul Qadr, wherein which the Qadr, which is found within the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet with containing all the decrees that Allah has already determined would occur, it's going to come down to the lowest of the heavens, and it's going to be dictated therein. That night, the worship therein is better than 1,000 months of worship. 1,000 months of worship. Reflect. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy upon me and you alike. How many years of ibadah that equates to? We've fallen, like all of us, we fall short in our attempts to worship Allah as we really ought to. But this is an opportunity to renew our covenant with Him, for Him to see from us our genuine intent to start afresh, to turn a new leaf, and to have a new beginning, to have a recommitment to the covenant with Allah, that we are His slaves and servants. This isn't to be slavish. This is to recognize our bond to Allah, that we are His creatures and His beings, and our absolute love and absolute hopes are vested in His remembrance and in the greatness and glory, grandeur and kindness of our Master Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How beautiful are His names and how lofty are His attributes. The one who has given us all that we have. But most precious of all of that must be for the believer, for the one profound in their belief. It must be their Iman itself. And this, brothers and sisters, is what Ramadan has enabled us to do, if we've been blessed so far, to renew our covenant with, and our pact and our bond with this sublime deen, and to rediscover our potentials of what we really can do. Us, these same creatures who have this free will, who can do good and do bad, but we choose Allah over all other things. This opportunity, it's now coming into sharp focus in these nights. So let us be people of tilawah, of tadabbur, of dhikr, of sadaqah, of salah, of dua, and of true diyana. And by this and with this, we rest and place our hopes in the one who is the source of all hopes, and the one who has never let down anyone who put and placed their hopes, his or her hopes, before His door to His mercy. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His most beautiful names and His most lofty attributes, that He makes us of those people who are his emancipated slaves on all the nights of Ramadan, and he makes us from his emancipated slaves on the night of Laylatul Qadr. That he should be pleased with us in a manner whereby he will never be displeased with us thereafter. That he should accept from us our fasting in spite of all of their shortcomings and deficiencies. That he should multiply manifold our acts of giving and charity, and that he should cause them to be weighty in our scales on the day that we stand before him. That he should overlook, pardon, and forgive our trespasses and shortfalls with respect to his rights, however many there have been. And that he should give us the ability, the tawfiq, the divine accord to be of the people who set aright our affairs moving forwards, and that we discover a new self as we move forward towards Allah, a self that is humbled, grateful, and beholden to the dhikr of Allah, the remembrance of His Majesty, the Mighty, the Magnanimous, the Irresistible. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على رسول الله وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. Jazakum Allah khairan for your time and for listening, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, bless you, and keep you all safe. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
مناسكنا وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا إنك جامع الناس ليوم لا ريب فيه إن الله لا يخلف الميعاد. ربنا إننا آمنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا آمنا بما أنزلت واتبعنا الرسول فاكتبنا مع الشاهدين. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما للظالمين من أنصار. ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدت إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.